welcome back, anyone who listened to the first one. I'm Nate still. Now you have the great misfortune of seeing the face of who the voice belonged to. Over there we got Logan. And
I should probably be speaking. Hello, my name's Logan. This is a podcast.
They only recognize you for your voice, so like,
Yes.
and introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Faith.
That's Faith.
Yeah.
That's Faith.
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about myself. Hello.
What do we do? Like your year and your major, I guess. We're all college students, by the way.
I am a senior.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm an interpersonal and public communications major.
Yes, our first on the podcast.
Oh yeah, true. It's our first extrovert on the podcast.
Yeah.
In the past, we've been exclusively opening this podcast up to introverts.
Exactly.
And
honestly, our standards have slipped somewhat.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, so today we are going to be talking about Tim Burton's Edward Scissorhands. It is... I'm going to exaggerate a lot on this film podcast thingy, but this is genuinely one of my favorites. First time I watched it, So, do you guys cry when you watch sad movies? Well, I know you cry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Up until I was like 16 years old, I never cried during a movie. Ever. And then there was something about like, oh, you've hit the ripe old age of 16. You will now cry in everything.
Oh.
Yeah.
From Pinocchio to just about everything else.
From Pinocchio onwards.
Yes.
From Pinocchio on.
Yeah.
Pinocchio began it all.
Yeah. Do you cry very much during films?
Yep.
Yeah.
It depends on the movie.
Yeah.
I didn't cry during Shrek, though I probably should have. It's just so
I
beautiful.
didn't cry during that.
I did
one
not
either.
cry during Shrek. I don't cry during Shrek.
Huh.
Yeah.
Blasphemy. I'm kidding. I cried a lot after seeing this for the first time, and I don't cry very much during movies, especially around other people. I don't cry watching movies with other people, especially. It just takes me out of it. But this one I did, because it's a really, really... I can't keep saying it's a really, really good movie. But this one actually is a really, really good movie. It's kind of hard to classify what it is, but I think the best thing I heard is that it's a dark romantic fantasy. I think that fits pretty well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a very sad and almost gothic movie.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also got a lot of funny stuff in it as well. Just thinking of like the waterbed and stuff like that. There's a lot of good things about this movie. Yeah, and it's a really special one to me. Yeah.
I mean, you said it was like a little bit of a gothic movie. I would argue it's a very gothic movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's got all the themes. It's honestly like a sort of mishmash of a lot of gothic literature. Like you have obviously the themes of Frankenstein in there and the inventor creating Edward Scissorhands. Themes of Dracula, like these immortal being sort of like comes down into the town.
Castle too.
Yeah, Castle on the Hill. Gosh, what else? Oh, honestly, I could see some picture of Dorian Gray in there.
Yeah.
Very gothic.
Yeah. I even heard it, like, this isn't quite a gothic movie, but I've even heard it compared to Beauty and the Beast.
Ooh, yeah.
With Winona Ryder's character, most well-known and well-loved for being in Stranger Things, for being in love with, what is the beast, or the monster, which we'll talk more about. The monstrosity of Edward, or of the townspeople.
Don't call him Ed.
His name is Edward.
How dare you? He prefers Edward, darling.
I wonder how she knew that. Because, like, he didn't really say anything up to that point, and she's like, no, he prefers Edward. Okay.
Well, Peg kind of just got the vibe of Edward, which
Yeah.
we can also talk about more later. But
Yes.
Yeah.
I would argue this is Tim Burton's best film. And
Tim Burton's got some good films.
he does have some good films, and he's got a very, very unique style. Like, you know a Tim Burton movie when you see one. I feel like those are. I can't say the best because it's kind of hard to say what is the best when it's an art form.
Yeah.
But they're my favorite directors and writers is when they have their signature style, and you see that play out in each of their films, and everything about this movie is a Tim Burton film. From the cast, he uses a lot of the same cast, most notably Johnny Depp, and from the musical score, it's Danny Elfman is who wrote the score for this one, and he did a bunch of other really good scores, like he did the original Spider-Man scores.
Okay.
Yeah, and the Batman, the classic Batman.
Which it does make you wonder how you go from scoring something for Tim Burton, like Edward Scissorhands, and then all of a sudden you're like scoring Spider-Man with Tobey Maguire.
There's a little bit of a parallel, but
like the tiniest bit.
Yeah.
But
it's kind of got this like haunted vibe to it.
But that's because he made the music that way.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is going from this is Edward Scissorhands to going to this is Stan Lee's Spider-Man.
I guess you could see it as just going from one immensely popular movie to the next immensely popular movie.
Yeah.
Danny Elfman is really fun, though. I like him a lot. He always has this haunted vibe.
See, he's the secret to the success of the movies.
Yeah.
Not everybody else. It's Danny Elfman.
not anyone else.
No.
Tim Burton. We don't owe him any credit.
I can see some parallels between Bully Maguire and Edward Scissorhands.
Yes.
Which is why this episode will now be entirely about Bully Maguire.
Yes.
I'm sorry, I'm commandeering.
Shifting gears.
No.
But yeah, like I would argue that this is his best and definitely one of his most recognized films. I can't say the most. I think Batman would probably top this when it comes to recognizable.
Wait, which Batman?
I'm gonna check that.
Robert Pattinson one?
Right now. Not the Robert Pattinson one.
The Robert Pattinson one.
That's the Batman.
It is the Batman.
That
That's
is
true.
the Batman.
That's true.
But he did like the one with Michael Keaton.
Oh.
How many? I think. Oh, he did 3. Okay, so he did 3 Batman movies with Michael Keaton. All right, let's kind of delve into the movie. So one of the things that I mentioned to you actually after the first time I saw it a little while ago was the use of color in this movie. It's very different from what you'd expect in a movie. I think it was Professor Goins who talked about how color is kind of whatever you make it in a film. Like, you're the one who kind of sets, like, this, like, you can't say this color means this, you know? Red could mean anger, it could mean comfort, it can mean anything if you have a lot of red in films, whether, like, color filters or just the color red. It is kind of whatever you make it. And this movie kind of does the opposite of what you'd expect from color, because you have like this kind of haunted, dark, like lonely, desolate place, and it's all cold and it's a very harsh environment. And yet it's a place of loneliness. It's also a place of safety in the film. And then the most dangerous place throughout the film is the town, which is a very colorful place. It's very
a lot of pastels.
Yeah, a lot of pastels. It's and something that Faith and I even talked about is it's interesting because it kind of gives me 60 vibes, but it's not 60s. It's got like a mix of. It's got a mix of different time periods.
Yeah, like this time period never actually existed all at once. It's a mix of a bunch of different ones, and it almost makes me wonder if it's like some of either. Was this, like, Tim Burton's, like, favorite parts of time periods, or were these his least favorite parts of time periods, and so he used them to describe this town?
Yeah, this really awful
collection of humans.
Yeah.
But there's redemption in some of these humans.
Some of them. One family?
Yeah.
And a police officer?
Yeah.
He's not too bad. Yeah, I really love the vibrant colors. And Edward himself, he's a very, like, literally black and white person, you know? Like, he's very pale complexion, and the stuff he wears is all very gothic. It's all very black and colorless. And even when, I think it was Peg is her name. Yeah, Peg, who is kind of like this motherly figure to Edward, even when she gives him clothes that, like, aside from what the stuff he was already wearing, he's still kind of like this dark black and white figure. And it just clashes very sharply from these colorful, brightly dressed, very elaborate townspeople who are a bunch of turd nuggets.
Yeah, the movie almost confronts, like, the everyday thought of, like, colorful is good and dark is bad. And it challenges that, and it kind of says the opposite.
Yeah, this movie does say a lot about what we know about conformity, you know? Obviously, there's some societal standards that we need to conform to if we want to be able to succeed, but in a lot of areas, we tend to push conformity too much upon people. Especially in the modern era, it's really weird, because it's like we push this, like in order to conform, you need to be unique, but only in certain ways, you know? Like, everyone needs to be unique and they need to stand out, only in specific areas of their life.
But everyone needs to be unique in the same way.
Yeah. Everyone is unique, which means nobody is.
Exactly.
It's kind of this weird dilemma that we're...
Almost like the Incredibles quote, which is totally off topic, but everyone's special, which means no one is.
It's a very fitting quote.
It's a very interesting, like this is bringing me back to Dr. Warner's Rhetoric of Media class, where he talks about, like, the age of second orality.
Yeah.
And it's like sort of a falling back to the time when conformity didn't really exist, but it still exists because it existed at one point. So it's this weird state of conformity and uniqueness are the same, but also different at the same time.
It's this weird mix. And he talked a lot about standard, and I guess you could say that the standard, which you can't be an individualist without a standard, because you need something to kind of break away from. Yeah. But in the world we live in now, the standard is to be an individualist.
But not too much of an individual.
Yeah, exactly. Which is it's very bizarre to think of it that way. We're getting a little off topic. Edward Scissorhands, snippity snip snip. So the color, it has a unique way of kind of bringing the story to life. And what is beautiful in this movie is the colorless shots, you know, like whenever they're inside, for example, that's usually it's a pretty safe place for the most part throughout the film. Most of the bad things happen outside. And whenever it's inside, the colors are toned down a little bit, and the lighting is a lot softer. While when they're outside, it's a lot harsher and a lot more colorful.
And to me, like, when we go outside, it's so, like, barren, so empty. It's honestly very scary in, like, a sort of low-key, passive sort of way. Yeah. And
I guess this kind of brings us on to the next point. And the townspeople are very... I mean, I guess this kind of goes hand in hand with the conformity topic. They're very bizarre. I don't really know how to put it. They kind of follow this very, very strict pattern of living. In the morning, all of the men leave at the exact same time and using the same car, which it's very appealing to watch. Like, it's a very visually satisfying scene to watch whenever they're all leaving or coming back. But they kind of leave. The moms of the town kind of form this, like, community amongst themselves.
Very toxic community.
It is a very toxic community, and I've never been more scared of moms. But yeah, the way news travels in this is very... How do I put this? It's required. Like, it's not a place where they take to privacy very lightly. Like, they don't.
There is no privacy.
Yeah, exactly. When Peg is bringing Edward back, It's like, who is this person that you've brought back? And they're very critical and overly curious, to the point where they kind of abuse the kindness of Peg to get into her backyard, and have this barbecue, which she didn't intend on having. And which, frankly, it wasn't necessarily bad for Edward in the end, but it was definitely putting him out of his comfort zone, and had a lot of potential for disasters to happen.
Yeah.
Especially because he's been such an outcast, and he doesn't understand social norms.
And it was a moment of desensitization. I don't know. They desensitized him.
Desensitization? It made so much sense in my head. I'm like...
Yeah, but I can't say it out loud. Anyway, but that's basically what they were doing. Like, he had this, almost healthy fear of these insane women. And then they all... One shoved ambrosia salad in his face, which I thought was utterly appalling. And two, he just became comfortable around them.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where the trouble started, in my opinion.
It's a very high expectation little town. Like there's a new guest, okay, so you're going to do this, and you're going to do that, and you're going to come over to my place, and you're going to help me with this, and there's a lot of expectations pressed upon people in this
sense of
this
conformity.
Town. Yeah, exactly. If you're here, then you're going to be one of us, and if you're going to be one of us, basically you're going to do what we want you to.
Exactly. I mean, the first thing, I forget, Peg does when she brings it back is she dresses him in Bill's clothes.
Yeah.
And even when he tries to fight that sense of conformity, or maybe not fight it, but inadvertently goes outside the norms, the townspeople sort of take that and incorporate it into the norms.
Yeah.
If he cuts the topiary weird, everyone's got to have their topiary cut weird.
Oh yeah, that's true.
If one of the moms gets their hair cut by him, all the moms have to get their hair cut. One of the dogs is all zhuzhed up by him, all the dogs got to be zhuzhed up.
Yeah, and that really speaks into what we mentioned earlier about conformity, about how they have this weird thing that we have very strongly in our modern society, where everyone has to be unique to an extent.
But then nobody is unique because everybody's trying to be unique in the same ways.
Yeah. And the things that are culturally looked down upon or just people find disinteresting, then they just kind of push it to the side and see it as, oh, that's a weird thing to do. And it's like, well, you have all these other things that you do that are, frankly, kind of strange, but it's like, oh, it's okay. But you guys set those as kind of the gold standard. I guess another way we could put it, even though I don't believe there was very much exposure to the ice sculptures from the town, but the ice sculptures is kind of his masterpiece. It's really where Edward's talent shines the most, more than the shrubs, I would say, in the hair and stuff. And nobody wants that. No one cares. It doesn't really fit the standard that they have for that town. And they would melt. So there is that.
Part of that is it's a warm climate culture.
Yeah. It's a very warm culture. Yeah.
Something that I thought was interesting was the whole play into the housewife idea, because they even mentioned that a day in the life of a lonely housewife. One of them says it, the horrible lady.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because they're almost playing on it as all these women are so bad because they're so bored.
Yeah. I mean, their husbands are just gone.
Yeah.
They're not there.
And so it was almost like a question of is Burton trying to point out of that they were terrible people because they were left alone.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It was a very interesting thought.
Left to their own devices. Yeah.
And they were all so bored.
Yeah.
They wanted to know about Edward coming into town. And they would have been way less interested in him had Edward been a girl.
True.
Yeah,
because they were like, who's that mysterious man that you're bringing into town, and blah 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 blah. You just want to keep him to yourself. But in reality, had it been a girl, they would have just been like, eh.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think they would have been like, eh. But I think they would have been a lot more critical of Edward if he was a girl. Would have been a lot more of a, who is this strange person? Get them out. Get them out.
They probably would have made her conform more had
Yeah.
Edward been a woman.
She would have
That's
looked
true.
a lot more like them.
Yeah.
With Edward, they kind of wanted Edward to do the things they wanted, and to make like their hair and their dogs and their shrubberies look a specific way. I wouldn't be surprised if Edward was a woman, then they would try harder to make Edward look like something. Like they didn't really try to make him look like anything.
Yeah.
In this,
Besides just dressing up in Bill's clothes.
yeah,
And even
yeah.
then, they didn't make him take off his leather get-up underneath.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which I don't think he could.
I think
Yeah,
that
but
was his
It's like skin.
outsides. Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, I mean he's a machine of sorts.
Yeah.
Kind of like a Frankenstein-ish, like a blend between Frankenstein and.
And they
machine.
did try to conform him in other ways as well. Like she put the makeup on him.
Yeah.
To try to
Yeah.
make him look like he didn't have scars.
Yeah.
And to hide like the dark circles around his eyes and all of that.
That was done a lot more lovingly though, but it
Definitely, but
But also
we
to that same sense of conformity.
yeah, it is.
It was her way of trying to help him blend in, so
Yeah.
he felt loved.
Out of fear of
The
him
other people.
being seen as a monster.
Yep.
Which another point is that I would argue this is a monster movie. It's classified as a monster movie. Tim Burton's famous for his monster movies, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But it's kind of bizarre because Edward is a monster of sorts. He's kind of like deformed's not the right word, but he's abnormal in a scary way. You know, he's got these killing devices on his hands.
Yeah.
He's
We
very
barely talked about those.
yeah, very very. It could easily be a horror movie. And sometimes it feels like it is, but it's not. But he's not really the monster in this. It's these housewives, minus Peg, who's one of the sweetest humans alive.
Yeah, him and Peg are probably the main protagonists. Like, not probably, but most definitely are. And they're
Yes.
kind of the only ethical, moral people in the whole movie.
Yeah. Everyone else, even the people who do kind of have a soft side in them, and I grew to like, kind of like, I believe his name is Max, the kid, the little boy.
I think so?
Like, he didn't start out too well, but as the movie went on, he grew as more of a soft spot. And then, of course, with Kim, she obviously grew to like him
See,
more.
I
Guess.
my thing about Kim, I love the whole little romance that happens. I'm a sucker for romance, like whatever. But the thing about Kim that just keeps getting at me is I realize that she only becomes nice to him when she becomes this weird attracted to him.
Yeah. And it's that same kind of weird attracted to him that a lot of the housewives have.
Exactly.
Yee.
And so Kim, like, when she thinks he's weird, she doesn't want to be around him. She doesn't want to talk to him. She doesn't nothing. And then all of a sudden, I think it's when he's on the show, she realized that he has this attraction to her, and then she starts to reciprocate, and then she starts to be kind of nice to him.
Yeah.
But until the attraction is there, Kim treats him like worse than the townspeople do. She thinks he's a freak.
Yeah.
And, like, what really cemented me as not liking her that much is, like, at the very end, after he saves her brother, like, she doesn't try to stop the townspeople or anything or even thank him. She's just like, get out, run.
She's so... has, like, the helpless princess mortality. Not mortality, morality. Of, like, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm so sorry. Like... whatever. Like,
well, in that last scene, I don't know how much she could have done.
She could
she could have at least told them, like, it was an accident, or been,
Yeah.
like, stood in the way, or anything.
because they wouldn't have hurt her, I don't think.
No.
Probably not.
And nobody would have started chasing him or trying to beat him up
Yeah.
had she said it was an accident.
I
Because
mean-
there is this, if a townsperson says something, everything cools off. Like, as soon as he's about to get arrested, they're literally about to shoot him because he's not putting down his weapons, which are his hands. A townsperson comes over and says, we know him. And everything's all of a sudden fine.
Yeah. But does she have the same authority as these other housewives.
Maybe not the same authority, but I think she, like, if the situation calmed down, she would have been able to, like, explain that he was saving Max's life, which I think probably would have calmed down the, I get him.
And then not only would she have been able to say stuff, but Max would have also been able to join in.
Yeah.
And then by the time then, Peg could have gotten over it. Like, there was this whole thing of, like, rapport that could have happened.
Yeah.
That was totally ignored because
She just
told
him
said,
to run.
run away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot in this movie could have been handled better.
Which I say all this out of being extra critical. I love Winona Ryder.
Yeah.
I really want to like her character because I adore Winona. But yeah,
Winona.
Winona.
It's so fun to say.
While we're analyzing Kim, there was something that was really interesting. As Kim grows closer to Edward, so does her clothing colors. Because she starts out really, really bright. And then, like, at the time when she's, like, then she goes a little lighter. And then when he and her are the closest, she's in white and matches him. And nobody else in the movie wears plain white. But she is just stark white, no other colors.
Yeah.
And, like, her everything kind of just darkens, but in a good way.
Yeah.
And she matches Edward, and I'm like, they use the color to show that she loves him more.
Yeah, I'd never noticed that before. Once again, color used for storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah. I ship.
I ship too, just because Edward adores her so much, and
Yeah.
I think in the long run she actually could be good to Edward. She just has to learn to like.
Yeah.
Stop conforming.
Yes, which in the end she does.
Yeah.
Because there is that redemption of she threatens to kill her ex, which is like, whoa.
True.
Super extreme.
It is a real butt.
Yes. Real ooh, I said what was I saying? Oh yeah, so she like in the end she kind of does go against conformity and she lies to everyone to save Edward and to let him have that life of peace that she knows he can't have in her town.
Yeah.
Even kind of uses her brain to go and find another hand to make it look like he's actually dead. So
yeah, there's a lot we can even talk about with the ethics of that, because I mean we're all you and I are in an ethics class. You're not in that class, right?
No.
Yeah. But basically how we like to see things in black and white. No pun intended with Edward. But usually things are a lot more gray. Like in this situation, like I don't think anyone. I wouldn't say anyone. Most people wouldn't argue that it was wrong of her to lie to the townspeople. But because she was doing it to protect Edward, and it was not at the expense of anyone, and it was to keep these very hateful and really despicable people from threatening the life of the person that she cared about. Yeah, it's a lot more gray then.
Yeah. This movie does kind of challenge the thought of is lying always wrong?
Yeah. I mean, it challenges everything. I mean,
yeah,
the protagonist is this, like, pale, monstrous, like, black leather, these crazy scissor hands, and the bad guys are these, like, these moms. Like, usually when a mom is the bad guy, it's like, it's portrayed in, like, a Disney fashion where she's this witch, you know, like, she's this awful...
But instead
wretched.
It's these thin, kind of quirky looking, bright colored, dressed, everyday housewives.
Yeah, who have this positive demeanor, but it's used to mask a lot more of a sinister and selfish person. I mean, they're at their core, they're just very deeply selfish and abusive people. They abuse Edward for his talents. They don't really see him as anything but his hands and what he can do with them. Whether it's like cutting shrubberies or like shish kebabbing or whatever, all they see him for is his use to them, what he can do for them. While you have characters like Peg and eventually Kim, who they see past that and they see him for far more than just his hands. They see the heart of who Edward is. And one of the quotes that I have down here at the bottom that I feel like is really fitting at this moment is when he's on that television program and people are like talking about how he can get corrective surgery, they can fix up his hands, and he can have normal hands. One of the audience members says, "But if you had regular hands, you'd be like everyone else." And it's kind of this like, oh, don't you want to be special? Because if you don't have those, there's nothing that makes you worth anything. You lose your value because the only value you have is through your ability to cut things in a unique way. But then Peg quips in and says, no matter what, Edward will always be special because she doesn't see him for his hands. She sees him for his cookie heart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of, I just love the symbolism of the cookie heart because one thing I noticed while watching is like, wow, this is a cookie cutter village. They're all the same. So I don't know if that's intentional symbolism, but I thought that was really interesting. And they also pay him for all his labor in cookies.
Yeah. True. You can't buy a car with cookies, but you can buy Edward with cookies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
It also kind of goes to show Edward's character and the type of person he is, because like when you think cookie, you think like sweet and well, I know this is kind of a weird thing to think of when you think of a cookie, but innocent, it's there's this childlike
milk and cookies. It's
joy.
what a child would eat.
Yeah, and like a curiosity that kind of personifies cookies, versus like any other dessert or.
Yeah, and I think that childlike innocence is what really characterizes Edward. It's like, and a lot of the film is him losing that innocence.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he's put through so much. Also, this is kind of backtracking a little bit, but another thing I remember about the lying thing that you said is when he was breaking into that vault. And like he knew it the whole time, but the only reason he was doing it, and he kind of put on this persona of not knowing what was going on, but really he was doing it because
Kim asked him to.
Yeah, but that's we already talked about that. The cookie kind of does, like you said, Logan, the cookie kind of personifies Edward, which is kind of bizarre, especially because
it's his heart.
Yeah. I mean, that's what inspired the inventor to make him, was the heart of a heart-shaped cookie. And something that I kind of noticed is the inventor and Edward have a lot in common. Like they're both very alone. They're in the same place, ironically. But they both feel this loneliness and this sense of being an outcast. The inventor he doesn't surround himself with anyone. He isolates himself and surrounds himself with machines. But as we can see with when he was holding up the heart and with the making of Edward, he still desired relationships, and he desired any love, but he didn't have that, and so that's kind of why he made Edward. And then also, as far as we know, they share an innocence. I don't see any malicious intent coming from the inventor, and maybe there's a backstory. I think it would be awesome if they made a backstory movie.
That'd be cool.
About the inventor. But from what we know about the movie, he's a very innocent, and I dare to say simple in the sense that he just desires love.
Yeah.
And there's innocence added to him just through recognizing that he isolated himself from the town.
Yeah.
Which we, as the movie goes on, continue to see as malicious and abusive and toxic. And the fact that he separated himself from that automatically makes us think, oh, he's better.
Yeah.
He's in the safe space of the castle on the hill. And something else that they share is their desire to create, to fill the holes in their heart.
Yeah.
He does it by creating personified robots, and then eventually Edward. And Edward does it with his topiaries and eventually with the ice. And he creates personified figures. Almost always is it some sort of animal or person or thing. Only time that it's not an animal or a person is when he does the topiary of the hand. But that's also is kind of self-explanatory because he kind of really wants hands.
Yeah.
And
even then, it's still like a living thing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's something that he desired.
Something that's really sad that I found out pretty recently. I don't know him from anything else, but the actor for the inventor, Vincent Price, he's one of those like old-fashioned classic actors that is like one of his earliest films was like in the 40s.
Oh damn.
So he's been around for a long time, and he knows his stuff. You know, he's not an amateur low budget actor. But something that was really sad is he actually died. Like, it was either during the making of this film or shortly after. And it kind of adds another layer of, like, since knowing that, it adds, like, another layer of heartbreak when he dies in the movie. It just, because it's a very, like, shocking death. Like, at first, to be 100% honest, at first when I saw the movie, I thought he was mad before he died, because he was like smiling because he was giving Edward his hands, and then his face just drops and he has kind of this angry expression almost
insane
kind
of look.
But it was because of the pain from I assume a heart attack or his heart giving out
or stroke
something like that. That killed him. But it adds a lot more of a sadness to his death. And even to Edward's view of him, because he was very much like a father to Edward. He was the closest thing he had to family. I mean, he taught him everything, and
he called him his father.
Yes.
When Peg asks him, like, your mother, no answer, but your father, he never woke up. This is really random, but something else that's really interesting is like Edward's view of himself, because he would like to be conformed. Because he does not like being so different. But then he realizes that conformity isn't right. But one of the very first things he says to Peg is, I am incomplete.
In more ways than one.
Yes. And it, like, initially we're thinking, oh yeah, because he doesn't have hands.
Yeah.
But he didn't finish his social skills training with his father, which they show us as they're reading like a etiquette book. And he didn't learn anything about the world or anything like that. But it was just really interesting to just see, like, not only does everybody in the town see Edward as a monster, but he views himself as the monster. And that all of it's his fault. Which is it adds to the sadness of the movie. He really does blame himself for all the bad things that have been happening to him. I think one of the things that makes this movie so great is the relationship between Peg and Edward. Like, it is very rarely do you see a character so in such a quirky way show love in such an honest and genuine way as well to a very broken and lost and with no motive.
None.
She has nothing to gain from this man. Nothing to gain from him being there. Honestly,
a lot to lose.
Yes, that's why. Like all it does is it honestly makes her life way harder. And probably after Edward even went back to the castle at the end, she was probably pretty much a social outcast for a lot of the film. And she even says that, like, I didn't think this through and figure out how this could hurt us so much, hurt this town and hurt Edward. But she really does care for him purely out of the love of her heart. And it really makes you adore Peg for all of her quirkiness. It's almost funny because I feel like in any other type of movie, we would find Peg annoying. Like her character and like...
Especially her job.
She's kind of like the quirky mom. But you really just can't help but adore her because of how much she cares for and shows love to Edward for no purpose other than she just does.
Usually in dark movies, characters that are this like bubbly and like excitable and very soft in a good way, but ultimately a softer person. Usually in a movie this dark, people like that die, and so I'm very glad she didn't. I don't think it would have been good for the movie, and also it would have been really, really sad first the inventor, and then Peg.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, from the moment she sees him, like, all there is... Well, first there's fear, but she gets over that really quickly and sees Edward for what he really is. And that's a lost and broken...
Child.
Man, but child, yeah.
Yeah.
And he kind of is, like, he's incomplete in that he might look like he's kind of like this teenager, but he's a boy, you know.
And she looks for the real things that he needs. Like, when she first sees him, she's not like, oh, like, I'll change his clothes or cut his hair or whatever. She's like, we need to make sure that the cuts on your face don't get infected.
Yeah.
So let me help you with that. And then it's, you know what? You're just going to come home with me.
Yeah. I think some of my favorite scenes are honestly when she's just, like, it's just the two of them and she's caring for him. Yeah. Like, whenever she's, like, putting the stuff on and it's, like, it looks terrible. And she's like, oh, that's not gonna do.
She makes his face purple with the lavender. And she's so happy to do it, but she has no idea what she's doing. And she's like, darn this stuff.
Yeah. And he takes so much joy in her showing love to him because, I mean, except for the inventor, he hasn't had anyone show love to him. And it's in a very different way. His love is... I do think he genuinely loves Edward. But there's something very different about the love of a mother that Peg demonstrates in this. It's a very, like, I want to say hands-on kind of love.
Well, and one of the main differences in contrast is the inventor's love was Edward was all he had. And so it was almost a love out of necessity.
True.
But Peg went out of her way to love on Edward when she had a loving husband, 2 beautiful children, a very happy, cushy life. But she's kind of leaving / jeopardizing all of that to love on Edward.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where, like, the main almost heart difference is the inventor's was out of necessity and hers was out of sacrifice.
Yeah.
Like Warner says, it was sacrificial love.
Yeah.
Peg is a symbol of humanity.
True humanity,
True humanity.
Yeah.
It's at its most Christ-like point.
Yeah. We typically view humanity as being very evil, but I mean, God created humanity for good, and in the garden it was good. I love what he says about it being, what does he say? It's incomplete, and it's not perfect, but it's good. Gives people, because it's a human thing to grow, and God gives that space for humanity to grow. Yeah, that's what we mean when we say human.
As he looks at the camera to talk to y'all directly.
Yeah. You guys. You're human.
Because we know.
Yeah.
We've met Warner.
Yep.
We know what he's talking about.
Yeah.
But you don't.
You don't. Suckers.
Don't call your listeners suckers.
Yeah,
it's so creepy.
Another point that that I actually forgot to write down in my notes when talking about this is that something that is really, really amazing about this film that we owe Johnny Depp a lot for this. Is not the right word. That's a little overkill. Johnny Depp expresses his talent through the use of nonverbals because his character has very few lines. It's very difficult to play a role without speaking. I've done it before. It's not easy, especially if you're not good at nonverbals like I am. But he does a fantastic job at expressing all the emotions of Edward perfectly, just through his expression and his posture and everything. Like from the disappointment and not being able to eat a pea, and just the shock and horror of being caught when he was trying to break into that, not bank, what is it? Vault?
It was a house.
Yeah. The bully's dad's vault.
Yeah.
And even just expressing the joy in being able to feel love for basically the first time in however long he lived. That's another thing. It never really says how long he lived, because he doesn't age.
No.
We see at the end of the movie that that's true, and he's not human. So,
Mhm.
but I think one of the scenes that makes me the most happy is honestly at the very beginning when Peg is driving him to her house, and he's just so happy. And then he like bangs his head on the window, and he's like shocked, and he's like, "What did just happen?" Because he's like a child, not in a bad way. He's just incomplete. Goodness, that sounds awful. Children are incomplete.
They are.
I mean,
In a way,
really
it's
wrong.
like that's why Peg feels the need to take care of him and protect him in the same way that a parent feels the need to take care and protect their kid, because they are incomplete and they're vulnerable and they can be taken advantage of.
Yeah. Like now the townspeople try to take advantage of him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. They're honestly some of the most despicable people in movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To this day, I still argue that my least favorite movie character of all time, the most despicable movie character, is Joaquin Phoenix's character in Gladiator, which he is the worst. He's a fantastic actor, and I really like him in person, and he did exactly what he needed to do for this role. Just the character is despicable. But these housewives, they're pretty close to that despicable.
Especially the main,
antagonist.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of antagonists.
Whatever she is.
Yeah.
I want to... No, I can't say that on the TFC podcast.
Say it. You'll cut it out later.
Yeah.
The main...
Yeah.
Our introduction to her is talking to the guy fixing her dishwasher.
He's just trying to do his job.
And she's like...
Which also makes the weird thing she has with Edward a lot more creepy.
Yeah.
He is
like,
childlike.
She wants to
and innocent.
pervert him.
It makes people almost feel like
It's
she's
almost-
a pedophile.
Yeah, it is very pedophilic.
And it's like, no emotionally healthy person preys on someone who is so innocent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So she has pedophilic tendencies.
Yes. Even though it's awful, I really love the line when he's like, yeah, and she... Do you guys remember her name?
I don't remember her name.
Edward
but I know
was-
what you're talking about.
Edward's in the diner, he's like,
Was
yeah,
it
she...
Pam?
Maybe.
Pam? Wait, I can just pull it up. Let me see.
Google it. Google
Joyce.
Google it.
Oh, that's sad. The only Joyce I know is very nice. And she's like, yeah, or he's like, yeah, Joyce showed me around the hair place, and then she took me to the back room where she took her clothes off. And the moms and the Peg and Kim just look at him like, what?
And then Max starts giggling.
And the dad just keeps talking. Like, he didn't hear any of it.
Here's the thing, though. Either he didn't hear any of it, or honestly, I don't think the dad's surprised.
Really?
Really. He knows how weird the people in his town is. He's just like, huh, it's just another day. So I feel like either it was purposeful, either in he didn't hear it and he just keeps going on because he kind of has an oblivious role.
Yeah.
Or it's nothing new.
Yeah.
He knows these women are weird. He knows the people in his town are odd. So he's probably just it's a Thursday.
I guess,
Go
but
ahead.
in that case, wouldn't also the Kim and Peg be like that? Because they also grew up in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Well,
they also have a different connection
and this
to
is-
Edward.
That's true.
that and Peg is always seen as different. Peg does not completely conform to the things of her society. And that's shown through her actions and her behavior and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And this is Kim as Kim is going away from society. Because I almost feel as though, earlier Kim wouldn't have, cared as much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because earlier Kim was so self-absorbed, and worried about herself and her clothes and all of that I don't even know if she would have cared as much either.
The dad is a very interesting character in this movie because I have mixed feelings about him.
Mm-hmm.
On one hand, he does seem to have this care for Edward. He
Mhm.
does like Edward, and he wants him to be successful and to make money and to be able to like live normally. But it kind of feels like he, for one, he kind of has the opposite of the town where all they see is his hands. But it's not like he sees just as hard like Peg does. He doesn't see his hands at all, it feels like. Like he doesn't understand how he could never be normal. Because he keeps talking about how he should open a business and how he should get a car. Like, how is he going to drive a car? And how he should live just the average life. And he's very oblivious to a lot of Edward's trauma, you know? Like, I don't think he doesn't care about Edward. He's very oblivious to the state Edward is in. And because of that, he's not quite able to love Edward, or even be loved by Edward in the same way that Peg and Kim can, because they actually get to see past all of that.
Yeah, because even if he does love Edward, he's not loving all of him because he can't see his hands.
Yeah.
Well, it almost makes me wonder if, like, he's definitely loving Edward the best he can love anybody, because he treats all of his other family members that way. He doesn't see Peg's issues or problems. And he almost makes me wonder if it's the film's way of trying to, okay, we've talked about the toxic housewives and like how they have all this intent.
Gossipy
This is almost
housewives.
like a type of toxic masculinity in that, okay, you gotta get a car, get a job, do your life, and go about your day and get over all of the problems. Which almost makes you feel for him, because if he's ignoring everybody else's problems as much, the people who he genuinely loves, imagine how many of his own issues he's ignoring. Which is really reading into it. But I think he loved Edward the best he knew how.
Yeah, I'd agree.
And he loved him just as much as his own children.
Yeah, he's a little detached and a little oblivious, but I don't think there's any reason to assume that there's anything malicious about him, especially in light of the housewives.
No, I think that there's nothing malicious about him. I just think that he's a way to kind of demonstrate the other end of the spectrum of, like, there are these toxic housewives who, like, their whole goal is to gossip and to stir up trouble and to be a part of everything. And
use him.
His is to kind of, like, life just needs to be smooth. Like, there's no reason to bring up trouble. There's no reason to acknowledge trouble. Like, you just keep going about your life and you care for your family with their physical and, like, money needs. And then other than that, like, there's no purpose to life or to being a man. Like he always told Edward, like, you get a job, you go to the bank, and you get a loan.
That's it.
And you get a car, and you get paid in money, and not in cookies.
Yes.
And, oh, that's a whole new way to look at it. Of, like, how, like, the cookies are, like, childlike and almost a way to express Edward's childlike innocence. His disdain for the cookies are to express he does not have any childlike innocence. The dad has none.
And he doesn't seem to have a very positive view of childhood, period. It's all about growing up. And we see that in a lot of other movies, and even in just society. In certain aspects of society. I'm not saying society as a whole, but a lot of times the childhood that we experience is kind of, I want to say, looked down upon. And it's all about growing up as fast as you possibly can. But there's a lot to gain from having a childhood, like a real healthy and freeing childhood. And it's not just about growing up as quick as possible. And there, like you were talking about yesterday, about like that doctor quote about being a child. Do you have that memorized?
No.
Oh, well, the gist of it is, like, what's the point of growing up if you can't be a child sometimes, is kind of what it's getting at. And I feel like that's something that's kind of undervalued in certain aspects in our society. And then in other parts of our society, it's overvalued, where we kind of just have to never grow up. And, there's a healthy balance to it, and it would take all day to kind of break that down. But yeah, that is a very interesting thing to look at when it comes to like the cookies and just growing up. All right, I have some kind of, as we're sort of coming to a close, I have some quotes that just have some interesting ideas and concepts we can talk about. The one that I wrote down that I think about a lot when I see the movie is it's Kim at the end of the movie, and she says, "No, sweetheart, I'm an old woman now. I would rather have him remember me the way I was." And this is in response to her grandson, I believe.
It was a girl.
It was a girl?
Yes.
I don't remember. When she was telling this story, and it was her response to the little girl saying, "Why don't you go out there?" And that's something I kind of wonder sometimes. Like, I don't think by any means it was wrong or unloving for her not to go up there, but also I wonder, like, why wouldn't you go up there? Because, like, he's up there alone, and there's a difference between, like, I see it would cause a lot of problems if she brought him back.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not arguing for that, but the thought of maybe her going to see him up there.
I mean, like, the town is, in her defense, the town is very much under, like, a state of surveillance by the moms.
True.
If she went up there, they'd see, and then they'd be like, "Huh, what's she going up there?
He's
Is
supposed
true.
to be dead.
Edward
He could
still up there?"
lead them up there.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
It's a lot of out of protection because he's supposed to be dead.
Yeah.
So why would she go up there? Period.
Yeah.
And her ex's body's supposed to be in the courtyard, which I don't know if anybody ever picked up.
No, it was hers. You're right. Sorry.
And so why would she go up there?
I should hope it's not there anymore.
Well, I'm sure Edward moved it, but from what we saw, not the townspeople, nor her, nor the police took his body.
It could decay because it's like years later.
Well, yeah.
Well, I feel like Edward probably buried him.
Oh, I'm sure.
How?
What do you mean how? He could dig.
He gets them into little pieces so it fits in the ground a little easier.
I was thinking he was just gonna dig a hole with his hands.
Oh, sorry. We're talking about a dead body.
You
and you
nut
go.
job.
And another quote, which I think you put on the notes, Faith. It says, "The light concealing cream goes on first. Then you blend and blend and blend. Blending is the secret." I guess that's kind of it looks into the conformity side of things.
Yes.
Like blending in
Is
the secret.
Yeah.
And Edward doesn't blend in,
He
and
can't.
so therefore he can't be a part of the society.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's spot on.
I just thought it was really cool because like it's this little thing that like I didn't even think of until I was like, I should look up like good Edward quotes, and then all of a sudden I see that one and I'm like, wow, that actually means so much to this, like, to the underlying theme of the story of Edward can't blend in, therefore he's a monster.
Yeah, it's a very deep line that kind of
coming from Peg very innocently.
Yeah.
And I think that it's also partially describing her. I don't even know how to explain it, but she herself tries to blend.
Yeah. And then one more quote that I wrote down, and I feel like this is kind of like an overarching theme of the whole thing, the whole movie, and it's people are scared of the things that are different, which is very true. We're very different, as in like the different we don't understand, because like we said, we're kind of in this weird medium where we want different, but we want like this amount of different. If it's more, then we're afraid of it. We don't understand it.
And I also feel like we only want different if it's a vetted kind of different. Like, sure, you can be punk or you can be grunge or whatever you want. You can be outside of the culture as long as you're in that own little culture of your own.
Yeah. We like to box things.
Yes.
We like to see things as what's the word?
See them legalistically.
Yes, but I was thinking like we like to see them like this and this, but really we should be seeing them dialectically, which is this. Everything's kind of mishmashing together. That also reminds me of the Incredibles. All little gears mesh together.
Except for he does it in a
The opposite.
yeah.
Yeah, everything's...
His is not to free people; it's to put them in a box
Yes.
into gears
Yeah, exactly.
that fit together the way he wants them to.
Overall, this is one of those movies that I will say you have to have a specific taste for. It's not one of those. Whoa. You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just touched the microphone with my earbud. My headphones.
It's a movie you have to have a specific taste for, because if you come into this movie with thinking about it logically, then you're gonna struggle a bit. You're gonna be like, okay, where's the ice coming from? Why they do this? How is he bleeding? If all these different reasons, you need to be able to come into this movie with a bit of a more imaginative,
A childlike imagination,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
Edward.
Yeah, I would have loved this movie as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like. One of the reviews I saw when I was looking at what people said about the movie, one of the ones that was really funny is, do not recommend for kids under 16. They will be having nightmares for weeks. It's like, there's scary parts about it, but it's not like a
I don't really find it as scary.
I mean, I watched it when I was a kid, and one of the parts that scared me. One of the parts that scared me when I watched this movie as a kid was when he shoved Max out of the way of the car and it's scratching up his face. That scared me.
Oh, I mean, I watched it yesterday and I had to close my eyes.
Every time he cut himself, you had to close your
Yeah,
eyes.
it just hurt my little heart. I couldn't stand to see him do it because it made him so sad.
Anyone coming into this movie with the logic on their brain is going to be confused and maybe even frustrated.
They're gonna be mad.
Yeah, it's not a movie that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to.
Definitely. As much as I would like to think that I have some siblings who would like this movie, not very many of my siblings would like this movie, except for my brother would like this movie.
Yeah, you have to kind of have that free thinking.
You have to think like Edward.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. And also, if Tim Burton has that vibe, this kind of mysterious, haunted vibe to his movies, and I love that vibe.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm more of a logical thinker too, even though I probably don't articulate it well. Rather than kind of like a what's the other thing?
Whimsical thinker.
Yeah, artistic, whimsical. I'm more of a logic brain, but yes, I'm still able to really enjoy this movie because I'm able to kind of put my logic and my expectations to the side and just enjoy.
You tap into your childlike wonder.
Yeah.
When you tap into this movie.
Yeah, which will always be there as long as I like movies.
Mm-hmm.
I would like it to stay there.
Yeah, it will. Yeah. So, do you guys have anything else you want to?
I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, something I should say is that these two, their laughter just feeds each other. Logan finds Faith's laugh hilarious, and Faith finds Logan's laugh hilarious. I can't ever have these two together.
But you can though, because it creates for interesting entertainment. Because Logan goes.
It creates for great entertainment, but nothing gets done when you two are together.
Hey, we've been productive.
Yeah, we were productive today. But there was that one time in the Eagles Nest we were there to do school, and no school got done.
Believe, that's all, folks.
Okay, well, if you haven't seen the movie, if you like the kind of fantasy,
Victorian, Gothic, steampunk.
yeah,
whimsical
different
tale.
movies, or anything from Tim Burton, highly recommend.
Oh yes, Coraline, beautiful.
Yes.
We should do that.
Coraline, I can finally watch it.
Yeah.
Now?
No, not right now.
Oh, January.
What?
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 Huh?
We can do it
What?
now.
Oh.
Oh what?
You
Yes.
should know the name of your own podcast.
You are the president
Yeah.
and manager.
Mhm.
You're like the double boss.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's all from us. This is your grand dictator, bidding you adieu. What does adieu mean?
Bye.
Goodbye.
See you. All right, that's it.